Hi guys, this is Michelle at East Ave Art, and today I'm sharing an easy Irish coffee tutorial with some cute shamrock coffee art. I'm really excited for St. Patrick's Day, and I love making shamrock Irish themed art this time of year. So feel free to paint along with me and build up some of your skills. I'll go over the steps and the process I followed to paint this cute little illustration. I start by doing a practice sketch on some scrap tracing paper. I use a coffee mug to trace a nice circle since I'm going to be painting an overhead view of this coffee mug. Then I'm going to draw in the handle. For some reason I was having trouble getting it to look right, so I kind of keep flipping the paper around until I felt comfortable with the angle. So next, and this is a bit trickier, I'm going to draw where the coffee is by following the mug's exterior circle. And I add a little shamrock to the center. So after I finish this practice sketch, I'm ready to move over to my watercolor paper where I follow the same process. I like to draw on tracing paper first because I just tend to erase more the first time I draw something. So I was sort of working the kinks out on the tracing paper, and that helps me to avoid damaging my watercolor paper by erasing too much. And so any kind of erasing and rubbing that you're doing on the watercolor paper is gonna deteriorate it a little bit. It is 100% cotton, so it's a little bit more sensitive because of that. Once I get the sketch in how I like it, I lighten up my lines a little bit with that rubber eraser. And I like working with the rubber eraser because I don't have to push as hard on my paper. I also will get my paints activated by using some water to spray on the paints. And then I start mixing up. So I'm going to mix up a very pale yellow, a watery yellow to serve as the lightest part of my coffee. I'm also going to mix up a variety of paints. I just want to have this effect of just having poured in some cream and then adding sort of the little coffee art at the top. So I'm also going to have a dark green, which I'm using for the color of the mug. And I also mix up some light green. I want to give the effect that they added a bit of green food dye to the latte art for the shamrock. Almost kind of like those shamrock shakes that you see at McDonald's, only hopefully classier. And I'll also use some ochre, yellow, and light brown, again for that base layer of the coffee. Okay, after all that prep work, I'm now ready to hit the page with some paint. I start with a light watery brown to represent the lightest color in the coffee. I like to establish my base layer as the lightest layer, and that really helps me because I prefer to sort of slowly build up my colors, and it's just easier to start light rather than start dark and then backtrack. With watercolor, you can really use the advantage of layering to add darkness to the painting as you go. But you can't really work in the opposite, in the reverse. So it's harder to make things lighter, if not impossible, with watercolor. While my coffee is still wet in that center, I'll also, once I get this base layer painted in, I'm going to go in with a darker brown, and that'll be around the rim. And I'm just going to let the colors sort of naturally blend because I'm doing wet into wet. So I have wet paint there, and I'm adding wet paint in, and just kind of seeing what kind of effects I get from doing this. And actually, while my coffee is still wet, I'm also going to drop in the green for my little shamrock shake inspired latte art, because I actually don't want there to be a harsh line there. If I allow the paint around it to dry before I drop in the green, then I'm just going to have a really kind of like a solid line. And if you think about when you've gone to the coffee shop and they've put a little bit of coffee art with the foam into your coffee, you've seen this. It's sort of blending, the foam sort of blends into the coffee around it. So I kind of am trying to create that effect by adding the green in while my coffee is still wet. And you'll see me throughout this process sort of adding a bit of brown, making sure the paint is staying wet, and then adding a little bit of green to capture that sort of like fuzzy blending effect. So at this point, I'm gonna let my coffee dry a little bit. And so I'll move on to an area that isn't touching that paint that's still wet, which is why I've moved on to painting the rim or like the lip of the mug. So I'm using my dark green for that. And you can see it's kind of delicate work. My head keeps getting in the frame. I'm trying to follow that circle that I used my physical mug to create. And I'll move my watercolor block around to make sure I'm getting the right angle. And I really take my time with this part. So you can see on the mug handle, I like to give the viewer a sense of light bouncing off the surface of the mug, so I leave a little bit of white space. And then I came in a little bit with the green to sort of like darken up my shamrock latte art. So next, I sort of built up a little bit of the brown around the inside of the mug just to kind of give some more depth. And then I decided to use some Payne's Gray to build a shadow inside the mug, just to kind of give that effect that, you know, as you look down from overhead into the mug, it gets a little bit more narrow and the light isn't hitting it quite as much, so you'd have somewhat of a shadow, which I'm reflecting with that gray color. Well, okay, so this is where, in my opinion, my painting gets a little wonky. I didn't plan to do this, but I decided midway through that I wanted to add in a saucer. And just, I don't know, I tried freehanding it and my saucer ended up being pretty uneven. And I spent a good chunk of the rest of the painting trying not to get too annoyed by the unevenness of it. So you'll see, this is where it really went kind of wonky and awry, and I wouldn't recommend painting without, you know, trying to at least pencil in some lines, especially with a circle. Circles are just so hard to get right, I think. So I think I flew too close to the sun with this one. If I had it to do over, I think I wouldn't have done this. I prefer to just, you know, have a plan when I start a painting. So this is what I get for being spontaneous. So to add some finishing touches and to try to fix up my wonky, uneven saucer, I pulled out, one of my favorite tools to use, which is white gouache. And I think I rely on it too much to fix things. So you can see I'm going around the exterior of the saucer and trying to add a little bit of gouache there to like sort of cover up the fact that it's such an uneven circle. And then I also add in a little bit of white on the saucer itself to sort of give the impression of a highlight. So if we're looking at it from overhead, you would be, have the light would be kind of reflecting off of it in this way. So hopefully it fixed it a little bit. I'm still not really sure how I feel about it. So to finish the whole thing off, I added a little bit of a shadow just to kind of place the painting on the page so it doesn't look like it's just floating there. Hey, and there you have it. This is a fun little Irish coffee shamrock shake inspired watercolor. I hope this was an enjoyable painting for you to watch. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and please like and subscribe to get more watercolor content. Thanks.